Hello, everybody. Welcome to another installment of Biology in the Basement, special edition fireside chat from my made up hunting cabin, as we've been calling this. I got a gift. This is Great Beards in Science. I'll start giving you facts of the day about these guys because they're pretty rare scientists. There's a couple good ones in here that I know, but not enough to give you a fact of the day right now off the top of my head. But Pavlov and Kepler and Da Vinci and some of these things, I really want to talk about some cool stories from their lives, and I'll share those with you because I'm going to wear this shirt a lot. I don't know, it's really comfy, so we'll get some use out of it. Anyways, the purpose of today's video is to talk about the members of the ecosystem, their roles, and how energy moves through that ecosystem. So that is our focus today, and the homework will be designed to look at that as well as what's called the energy pyramid, as we'll finish with. So let's have a fact of the day, and that is that scientists have discovered that medieval longbows, right, that they used to shoot in medieval times, were putting wounds into human bodies comparable to gunshot wounds. They made these longbows so long and were able to get such tension, and they were so strong they even fletched their arrows, so they were moving like a rifled shell, like a rifled barrel would have, and they were producing these wounds comparable to gunshots. So they were really up there on their bow technology, even in medieval times, considered the Dark Ages. So I guess it's only fitting if it's the Dark Ages. What are you the best at? Blowing people's heads off with bows. Great. All right, so let's talk about the members of the ecosystem. We'll start from the bottom up. You need the producer. The producer, as we've also referred to, is the autotroph, right? It is the species that is able to make its own food through photosynthesis. There are other autotrophs out there that make their own food through chemical reactions and things like that, but we'll focus on the plants and the algae for now. They, excuse me, they are the base of the food chain because they take the sun's energy, which no other species can use, and convert it into organic compounds like glucose, as we know. Then from then on out, we have all different kinds of consumers, or heterotrophs, organisms that obtain their energy and resources from outside sources. You learned about the three basic ones, right? The carnivores, the omnivore, and the herbivore, right? Eating meat, both, or just plants. Remember, vegetarian is a lifestyle choice, right? You are technically not a herbivore. Humans, we are omnivores as a species. Being a vegetarian or a vegan or a fruitarian or a pescatarian, whatever you are, that is just it's a lifestyle diet choice. So even though you may not eat meat, we're still omnivores as a species. Got into that discussion, if you couldn't tell, a few times. But there are other ones that we should learn about as members of the ecosystem, and your deeper knowledge of what gets handled basically in an ecosystem, right? We're not just talking about the consumers of the living stuff, but remember, there's dead stuff in the ecosystem, right? Those predators at the top, they just die of old age, right? We talked about how a whale carcass can serve, can supply 100 species for 100 days when it dies. And so there are these things called saprobes and scavengers and detrivores, all these decomposers, as they're called, as their role in the ecosystem. Their job is to take those compounds that are useful and turn them back into nutrients that our plants can use or other species can use, right? Um, Little thing, the boys have gotten hooked on Absurd Animals on Netflix. I don't know if I want to recommend this to you because it's kind of gross. It focuses really on the weird ways that animals either eat or the way that they copulate. They mate with each other. And it gets really disgusting. The boys were obsessed with some species that lives in a sea cucumber's butt and just eats its poop on its way out or something. So there's all kinds of species, all kinds of consumers. And so as you can see, we've got some examples here of those members. Now, there are other relationships in the environment that are positive, somewhat negative. We talk about predator prey. We used to do a lab, we'll skip that. Um, we talk about species competing, similar to my fact of the other day about how there was a 2 week long battle between lions and hyenas over a hunting territory in Ethiopia, right? Where we have some bad relationships between species competing for territories. But there are some other relationships which we refer to as symbiotic relationships, where two species are living alongside each other. And when I say living alongside each other, they're living. Some may be doing better than the other one in the scenario. The first one's the good one, mutualism, where it is mutually beneficial for both, where both species benefit from this relationship. Here was my example talking about using termites as bioreactors. Actually, a termite cannot digest wood or paper. There is a protist that lives inside its digestive tract that has the enzymes that can digest those lignins and other tougher compounds that are hard to digest. Why we don't eat wood, for example. But they have a protist living in their digestive tract. Other examples of mutualistic relationships are those bugs that get eaten off the backs of elephants and rhinos by birds. You've probably seen those before, things like that. The one that you may not have heard of is called commensalism. Commensalism is where one benefits and the other is kind of meh about the situation, not really benefiting. We've had to break some hearts and talk about good old Nemo, for example. Nemo and the sea anemone, they do not have a mutualistic relationship. It is much more commensalism. The sea anemone doesn't really gain much. The clownfish gains a lot by being able to hang out inside of the sea anemone and not get stung and hide there, but myths about it helping were not true. Another one that we look at is the pilot fish. The pilot fish is that fish that swims in front of the shark, and they used to think that it was piloting it, showing it places to find food, but actually it's not. It just seems to be the best spot for water resistance, and so that one's not really benefiting. So the shark just tolerates that fish, even though it does get to eat its scraps and it benefits. Of course, the saddest relationship here is the parasitism one, where one species is benefiting and the other one is being drastically harmed, right? Where we have two species living alongside each other, mutualism, both good, right? Commensalism, one good, one kind of meh, and parasitism, where they're living alongside each other, one good, one bad, but the other one doesn't die. It's bad for the host to die because it then loses its food source or source of resources. So parasites usually like to keep their host alive as long as possible because that keeps them alive as long as possible. But it is a relationship where both living alongside each other, and one for the better and one for the So here are some of your examples of mutualistic relationships where both are benefiting. Here are the few where one is benefiting, the other one is kind of meh. And here's the disgusting slide of all the horrible different types of parasites that live out there consuming resources. Okay, last thing I want to talk about with you guys is the energy pyramid and how energy moves through the ecosystem. It's very simple, right? All energy comes from the sun. Energy gives um, its energy to plants, where they trap it into things like the bonds of glucose. And animals consume these plants or other organisms, and then they get consumed by others, and depending on the ecosystem we can have primary, secondary, tertiary consumers. Who knows? um, the important thing for you to understand, and you should write this down on the side of your notes, is that when we move from one energy level, as it's called, to the next, when we go from plant to bug, in this scenario here, only 10% of the energy that this plant has ever taken in its life ever makes it into that bug. Right? Well, what happened to the other 90%? Well, it used it. It was lost as heat to the environment. And the same thing goes for the snake or the whatever that eats those bugs. Right? They only pass along 10% of their energy. And so I kind of try to use this as an example of why it is that it's rare for you to see a snake or a hawk or a bald eagle, even though I've seen quite a few bald eagles lately. And the boys have seen even more. Um, the reason is because it's only so much energy can make it up to those upper levels, right? So that's why when you go hiking in the woods, right, everywhere you go is green, right? And then as you're walking a little bit, you start swatting the bugs, or you're looking for ticks or whatever, right? Because there's tons and tons of bugs everywhere, right? Because they're eating the plants. Every once in a while, though, you see some other organism. That's once or twice here, a bigger upper level consumer, right? Because to keep that one red-tailed hawk alive, right, there needs to be hundreds and hundreds of squirrels for it to eat in a year. And to keep hundreds and hundreds of squirrels alive, right, you need thousands and thousands of trees and all those acorns and nuts and things, right? And so that is why we only have a small amount of predators at the top compared to the producers at the bottom. Hence why we call it the energy pyramid. Okay? And so I'll leave you with that. We've got to talk about nutrient cycling in our next video, but that was what I wanted you to have for there, and your homework will be posted below. Take care, guys. Miss you. Hope all is well.